Welcome to the seventh installment. We're already on the seventh episode of What's in Your Earbuds. I'm here with my co host, Joe Harden, and our good friend, writer, and honestly, jack of all trades, Elliot Matson. Um,
Hey.
who big shout out to Elliot for introducing me to some of his audiobooks. One of them, I think we talked about on Joe and him talked about on Beyond the Finish Line. That is inspired by the Bollywood film Sholay. I've got that one loaded up for my races. And speaking of races, before we dive in, I want to give a huge shout to Joe, who is doing his first 100 miler on October 12th at the Indiana Trail 100.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm excited. I'm scared. I'm scared shitless, actually, to be honest with you. But I think I'm ready. I did all the work, hazing the barn, right? So just taper madness for a little bit, and ready to hit the trails.
October 12th is my birthday, Joe, so I'm sending you
Wow.
good vibes.
Oh man,
Oh,
thank you.
man.
Cool. I'll take all. Happy birthday, and thank you for the good
Thank you.
vibes.
Yeah, happy belated birthday. And or happy early birthday.
Pre-birthday, yeah.
Happy pre-birthday. Unbirthday. um yeah, that'll be cool, and I'm probably gonna remember that, knowing that October 12th I'll be 24 hours into the Moab 240 as well. So Joe
Yeah.
and I have races lined up.
You'll be
And
looking at
funny,
the same moon, perhaps.
maybe, yeah,
That's what I do.
probably.
I'll be like,
And probably
so I'm
Jason will
looking
be
at this.
looking at it too while he's playing the only two songs on his list from the Pet Shop Boys, which is another funny coincidence of coincidences that my pacer at that time will be my business partner, Run Try Bike. Yeah, Elliot and I have had a lot of interesting coincidences since we met, like meeting at an REI in Portland.
Yeah.
That is
But
amazing. That is amazing.
oh man, that was great. But we have you here for a reason. You are the Folklord and the owner of Folklord Apparel.
That's
Uh,
very true.
just, yeah, big shout to your gear, the product that you're making. Leash-letic is what you call it. And he's wearing the hat right now. Uh, Plenty more to talk about that. I'm going to give you the floor to talk about that a bit later in the show. But
Sure.
we have you here because you are a musician and you do have a lot of, as always, do opinions about music. And it was actually Elliot's idea to have this spooky music special. So I want to dive right into it and hear about some of the spooky music that you're into and the spooky songs as we go into this fall season.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, despite my birthday being in October and having a whole brand about like cryptids and monsters, I'm not a big Halloween fan, oddly enough. But when the spooky season rolls around, I definitely have some tunes that I like to crank. Um, yeah, I don't know if you guys want me to go down a list or anything like that, but I wanted to point out that the impetus for this was I'm doing this promotion all October long. And of course, we're talking today on the spookiest day of the year, September 30th. But but in October, starting tomorrow, I'm doing a promotion with Folklord called Monsters of Folk. And what that is I made this series of collectible trading cards. And so if you buy something from Folklord, you'll get a trading card in your package and it has a unique discount code. So, we've got the Wolf Man, we've got Dracula, we've got Bride of Frankenstein and some others. And then I also have a golden ticket, Invisible Man, good for a free hat. So I reached out to you, Ohm, and pitched the idea of this kind of spooky theme. And yeah, like I said, I'm not typically a purveyor of spooky products, or I don't trick or treat much. But there are some definite songs and bands that I like. I think the first one that comes to mind, I don't know if this is going to completely derail the entire conversation, but the song that I always think of when October rolls around is Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. Um, that was on 30 Rock, sung by, of course, Tracy Morgan, aka Tracy Jordan. So that's the one that I always like to listen to at the first of the month.
Oh man, that I don't think I'll have to check that one out. Joe, have you heard that one?
I mean, I watched 30 Rock and I don't remember that, so that one's got me. But
Ooh.
it's definitely getting added to the list though.
Oh, it's incredible. It's like I know you posted this the post about us having this episode and you had Monster Mash and that's like the ultimate novelty Halloween song and 30 Rock there's an episode where they just make a reference to Tracy having his own novelty Halloween song. It's called Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. And the chorus is boys becoming men, men becoming wolves. So it's pretty awesome.
Somehow, I think I'm going to remember that. That might be my tagline for Moab: "Boys becoming men, men becoming wolves." When I'm looking up at the full moon and thinking about Elliot's birthday,
Yeah.
it's a good tagline. Um, what's interesting about Halloween to me is that there are songs that are flat out creepy. Like I was a huge video gamer growing up. Big song for me was Simon's theme from Castlevania. Was a
Okay.
big one for me. It's kind of like I think it's the organ as an instrument. Just has this like power to it. Um, and then it's funny. There's like scary, and then there's like adventure scary, but there's also like funny scary, like spooky scary skeletons, and like kids Halloween, and
Hmm.
you got films like Hocus Pocus, and
Where do you
uh,
guys lean into? I mean, when Halloween comes around, do you like horror movies? Do you like that kind of like Hocus Pocus type, like comedy horror? What do you like?
oh man, I will say for me, I'm all of it. Like I used to be creeped out growing up watching like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and like slasher movies, but as I grew up, I watch them every year because I fully began to appreciate like the work it takes to make those practical effects in those
Sure, yeah.
films. Like it may look cheesy to some, but I don't know if you guys know the Nightmare on Elm Street scene where the first girl was having the dream and you see Freddy with his arms all wide like this. And I'm just like, that is the coolest thing, and or the buckets of blood when Johnny Depp's character gets killed in another one. But I just appreciate the special effects. But I would say that I also like campy Halloween, like Hocus Pocus. I like Mickey's Halloween kind of stuff. Like, so I'm kind of on the spectrum of like all of it. What about you, Joe?
So of course I like the comedic Halloween like Hocus Pocus. I love like watching that with my daughter and stuff. But so random fact, I grew up on Elm Street, so I always watched those movies, right?
No
But
way.
yeah, so yeah, my
You're not Freddy
one.
Krueger, are you?
No, I swear, you
Okay.
guys can go. You guys
All
can
right.
have dreams tonight,
Just
and
want
I'll
to
be all
make a
right.
check.
Uh, but then I would go like full like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and like House of the Thousand Corpses. Like, but I can only do that for so long before I'm like, all right, I need to watch something funny before I like go to. I'm like, full grown human, and I'm still like, oh, that was maybe too scary before bedtime. so, so, but I got into like Hellraiser and like all that stuff. But I thought that stuff was kind of cool. But I mean, it's cheesy now. Like, but to Ohm's point, like some of that stuff, like the old Halloween movies or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre for what they had, those are just really good, well put together films, honestly. But now if like it's like a horror movie where it's like almost too realistic, no way. Like I can't do any like the I don't know, the Ring's not realistic, but that movie really like kind of got me. I was just like, maybe I'm just a chicken shit, I guess. But I could.
Yeah, that kind of stuff I can't do either. Like the body dismemberment and torture
Mhm.
stuff. I can't do that. But I like the more, I mean, it's on brand, but I like the more folk horror stuff like Midsommar or like Wicker Man, that kind of stuff that's rooted in some sort of weird history. I always gravitate to that. Or like a genre specific thing. Like my wife and I just watched the whole X series, like Pearl and X and Maxine. And I love that stuff. And I feel like a lot of what makes a horror movie is the music and the soundtrack. And just like you're
Yeah.
talking about, like there's this Netflix series called Movies That Made Us, and it's all about the behind the scenes of these. And they did a season of horror movies, and a lot is like about the practical effects that went into Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween or whatever. But there is a huge aspect of it that's like the score and what makes you scared or what makes you feel something.
Yeah, I have to ask you that question, both of you that question. I mean, talking about like music and soundtracks in horror movies being a significant part of it, like I have to say, like I would say one of the big reasons Freddy Krueger made me afraid to sleep, maybe it wasn't just Freddy Krueger himself, but was just that soundtrack. His theme is just so bone chilling. And then to think about John Carpenter's Halloween, like that was like it's not even, I mean, you could probably speak more to this, but I heard it's not exactly like a complex composition and it was made on a very low budget, but
Mhm.
it's become one of the most iconic themes of like horror and maybe one of the most iconic themes of like cinema. um and so I have to ask both of you, like, are there any horror movie themes that, you're just like doing a random thing and would just like come up in your head or like has have stuck with you for a very long time?
That's a great question. I think like Halloween and like any of those John Carpenter films, like yeah, I think what you're saying is like having it so distilled down to that's like a few notes, and immediately it's like the Jaws theme too. I mean, I don't know if you can classify that as like horror, but still, it's so simple and it like cuts right to the core and makes you freaked out immediately.
Yeah.
Depending on Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead,
So,
Joe.
so I agree. Yeah. It's like, it's, yeah, I agree with what Elliot was just saying.
I was gonna say, depending on who you ask, Jaws is definitely a horror movie. If you ask me as a kid, then I was afraid that there were sharks under my bed. um, and the fascinating thing about that movie, if we're going in the movies, is the shark's only in the movie for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, I have heard about that. Like they spent so much time trying to make the shark and it just looked like shit. And so they decided to remove him from a lot. But that the aspect of him not being seen makes it even more scary. And I feel like that is translated and transcended throughout the genre, where like the unseen stuff is the freakiest. And it probably gets back to the music too. I mean, like it's like, that cliche of jazz. It's like the notes that you're not playing, but it's like
Oh,
everything that you're not hearing is scary as hell.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you said you had more songs on your list. Let's hear some more.
Yeah, so there's a band that I always come back to, especially this time of year. And oddly enough, talking about movies, it was Ryan Gosling's band, and it was like in the early 2000s, back when he was famous, but he wasn't like a mega super action star like he is now. But he had this band with another. He's like a producer. He's actually like a lot of he's done a lot of horror movies as well. But they had a band called Dead Man's Bones, and the concept was they created this album with a chorus of school kids. And so it gives it this like kind of campy, weird, Halloweeny
Ooh.
aspect. And then like the kids singing is also very strange. Their album, if anyone wants to check it out, it's called Dead Man's Bones. But um, my favorite songs on it are there's one called My Body's a Zombie for You, and there's one
oh,
called
nice.
Lose Your Soul. And actually, in the past few years, I think it was a couple years ago, if you know who Cat Power is, she's a musician, but she covered one of their songs from a while ago. It's called Papa Power. And it's like, it's really good music, but it still has that creepy aspect to it.
Man, that's interesting. Like, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. I feel like
Oh,
there's a
you
lot
should.
here that I haven't heard of that I
Yeah.
really
Same
need
here.
to check out.
Yeah, especially like you wouldn't expect Ryan Gosling for who he is to have a band, but he also is like he has this very interesting, very specific kind of crooner voice that he uses, and so it just gives it this very weird, creepy sound. But it's really good music too. So I always throw that on the Halloween times. Another one that I was going to talk about is I'm a huge fan of The Cure, and I feel like you know, like Halloween and goth music or whatever you want to call The Cure, definitely are synonymous in my mind. And I think especially like The Cure's earlier stuff, like The Head on the Door and Disintegration, are two albums that I don't know if they necessarily work like in a horror movie, but they definitely have that sort of scary, creepy element to them that I really enjoy.
Are there any? So one of the things that kind of came in my mind right now is just kind of like music. And one question I've always had, depending on seasons, you've obviously got like Christmas music and you've got like Halloween music, but what about songs that feel like there's a particular time period to listen to them? Like, for example, like Korn and Slipknot are not necessarily bands that like you would listen to only at one time of the year. But for me, there are certain times where like it is like fall and October season. I feel like I have more of a desire to like blast like Slipknot, than I would like at other times of the year. Um, and I was wondering if there's any bands like that are seasonal for both of you.
That's interesting. What do you think, Joe?
I would say I don't think I realized it till you just brought that up because it hasn't been intentional. But I noticed that this time of the year, like as we kind of shift to fall, I will listen to a lot more bluegrass and
Hmm.
um, like dang, I just forgot his name. How did I just forget? Towns.
Van Sant?
Yeah, like I don't know why I'll get into more of that kind of stuff during this time of the year when it gets colder, but or like Tyler Childers or
A lot of flannel.
a lot of flannel. Yeah, my flannel gets heavy. Like I've already had one on this
Thick
week, so
flannel, yeah.
whew, like something feels right about that flannel. The first time that flannel goes on, and maybe my facial hair gets a little thicker, but so yeah, I definitely have that season where maybe I didn't realize that that's what's happening, but I'll start drifting into the bluegrassy, like uh, more like what do they call like the high lonesome bluegrass kind of sound. I guess I'll kind of drift that way this time of the year.
Sure. Yeah, I'm probably the same way. Yeah, like as you said, I'm not going to be like listening to Nat King Cole any other time besides
Yeah,
Christmas,
yeah,
But like in terms of like the fall Halloween time, I feel like my music taste will shift into more of like a somber
yeah.
tone, than usual. I have been listening to a lot of like different pop music. Like I'm still milking Brat Summer for all the listeners who are Charlie XCX fans and Chappell Roan fans. But yeah, I also listen to a lot of like instrumental music. I thought a good thematic tie-in. Again, it's not like necessarily Halloween, but there's a band called Man or Astro Man, and they I don't think they're a band anymore, but they're kind of uh like if surf rock like Dick Dale and the Deltones were from Mars. So it's kind of like a weird mix of uh, instrumental rock, surf rock music, and spooky stuff. Another one I feel like is Devo. They have just a lot of weird music videos and weird stuff. So I try to ride the wave into fall, even though I'm not a big Halloween person or Halloween decor person. I think the sound of it is definitely something that I'll get into for sure.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. What do you think about that, Joe?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I would definitely ride the waves of different. I probably won't be listening to a lot of Bob Marley when it's like 10 degrees outside, So like my music will like kind of shift around. But so yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I wanted to back up on a really crazy horror movie soundtrack. Everything that Rob Zombie does, it's not the music isn't scored for just the movie. It's like
Mhm.
it'll be like Midnight Rider by the Allman Brothers, but like while someone's getting murdered, and like for whatever reason that like adds
And
a
like
totally
dissonant
different.
effects. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that on what we were talking about earlier. Like I just thought every time I watch it, how well placed like a Marshall Tucker band song will be while something really chaotic is happening. But so I think those are wonderful, wonderful soundtracks for horror movies. But
It's interesting too, like what you're saying, the contextual element of even like a happy song or like, yeah, Marshall Tucker, Allman Brothers or whatever. But if you have that over top of someone getting brutally
Yeah.
murdered, then every single time you hear that song, that's what you're going to think of. I had a song like that on my list too. I always think of this song every October because it's from Beetlejuice, and it's I think it's called "Jump in the Line" or "Shake Sonora," but it's the the song that Winona Ryder dances to at the end of
Yeah.
the movie where she's like levitating. And again, that's like a big brass band song, and it's funny, but then like you think of what happens during the movie and just
Yeah.
the like macabre aspect of the movie, and it has a whole different vibe. But that's just like when it's Halloween, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to listen to Shake Sonora now.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think Harry Belafonte intended that for the
Yeah.
listener.
Yeah, I think nuance matters, right? And like,
Yeah.
Beetlejuice is presented as very much like it's like a Tim Burton, like creepy but kind of lighter kind of film versus like a hardcore horror film, and
Mhm.
it just shows you how like all the bits and pieces matter, like direction. I mean, I've been in the YouTube rabbit hole, and like I don't know if both of you have watched Friends, but there's
Mhm.
a particular scene where Ross is going crazy over a sandwich that his coworker stole, and somebody put it over like horror music. And what is a comedic scene makes Ross look like a total psychopath, And it's just like it just shows you how much the music matters. And now I might go down a rabbit hole of like what happens if you put like comedic music over like Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that.
Or like the
It's
Benny Hill theme. There's all
yeah,
those
like Benny
different
Hill. It's got to
YouTube
have been
videos
done.
where it's like they'll take the Game of Thrones intro and make it like a 80s sitcom intro where everyone's like turning to the camera. And I mean, you could easily do that with horror music or like a scene from Friends and just make someone look absolutely insane.
It reminds me of something Joe did. There's a band that my coach recently introduced me to who's like electronic metal, like new metal. They're called Cam FDM. They're like a German band. Absolutely love them. And there's a song called Megalomaniac that I play during ultras, and it's like a hardcore like single track song. And like Joe told me about how he was mowing the lawn to Megalomaniac.
Oh yeah, he told me that.
Worst chore ever.
Gotta hype yourself up for it.
It's like, let's go. Hey, those lines have to be, those stripes have to be on point in this neighborhood. So you got to get hyped up.
You will visit people in their nightmares if they're not, right?
Now we're gonna have to have our artist or somebody illustrate Joe as Freddy Krueger. Have to whip some. Oh man, but yeah, I think we might even be able to have a whole nother episode on like misfit music at some point because that's a whole thing of itself.
Do you guys consistently listen to music when you run, do you think? I mean, obviously the whole premise of the show is that, but like a lot of times I just like to not listen to anything, or sometimes I'll listen to a podcast, but typically like new metal in particular, but like music is not always the first thing I'll gravitate to, like especially on a really long run. But do you guys find that like gets you through?
For me, I would say that for my easy runs, I really like the stuff that's like a 1 hour run. That's like a consistent pace. It's on a road.
Mhm.
Like I'll probably pop in some music and some podcast or audiobook. But for the long runs in the mountains, I might pop in something occasionally if it's kind of that kind of day. But I usually just like to groove with nature and just listen to nothing at all.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes when I'm doing a hard workout, it's kind of 50-50. Sometimes I need to get myself hyped up for an interval. Like I'll definitely play some like EDM or like some new metal music. Definitely Killing in the Name is a big song for me. Like Rage Against definitely is good interval music, but um, I think it's definitely mixed for me. What about you, Joe?
So I've never started out with me, especially like at an actual ultra, because there's people like
Mhm.
if you're doing like a conga line and a single track, but I'll
Oh wait,
always
you
say
weren't talking about Harry Belafonte again. Never mind.
no, no, But like, so like for tempo work and speed work, like, if I'm on the road, then same thing. I'll like hype myself up with some like, I mean, it's like kind of like my guilty pleasure that I just love the most obnoxious gangster rap and like death metal. I can't help it. Like it just does something to me. So I'll throw that stuff in, or like maybe easy runs, like a good podcast or maybe a good audiobook. Right. And then, um, but for most trail runs, I don't until like, unless it's like a really, really long run, I'm kind of struggling. Then I'll throw something in. I kind of like a lifesaver. Like I kind of use it as like a crutch to get me through like the tail end of like a long run. But honestly, I don't, for like most runs, I don't always have music. I mean, I guess it's hit or miss. I guess it kind of just depends on the day, but
Sure.
Yeah,
I
I
did a
think.
big run yesterday, actually, up
yeah, I
on
saw
Mount
that.
Hood, and
Ooh.
I it's typically my MO to start any run very, very early in the morning. And I was thinking about doing this podcast, and typically, as I said, I won't listen to music for a long run like that. And then the other aspect was it was pitch black when I started, and I wanted to listen to nature, but also I wanted to listen to see if there was like a cougar in the woods. Um, but I was trying to think of like what would be the ideal song to listen to in that environment when it's like completely pitch black, all you have is a headlamp on. I honestly don't know if I'd want to listen to like a scary Halloween
Oh yeah,
music song in that environment.
no way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the type of guy who gets into the night run segment of a race, and I'm listening to like all kinds of creepy music and like murder mystery podcasts, and and then kind of
Well,
looking around everywhere, like maybe this isn't the best thing to listen to when I'm on the edge of hallucinating. Um, but yeah, I mean, definitely been there. Uh, so, before we close the show out and before we turn the floor over to you, Elliot, to just give a shout to Monster of Folk one more time,
Yeah.
we had some submissions of music for spooky songs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
yeah,
Joe put some viewers out, and we got some really great submissions. Really love the participation on this podcast. Everybody, appreciate you all.
yeah, we had a really good response. So first, we had Jennifer Goins, who I had on episode 11 of Beyond the Finish Line. So Jennifer Hocus Pocus soundtrack. I put a spell on you. That's a good one too.
Oh, that's good.
We
Yeah.
had we had Thrill from Michael Jackson come from Jennifer, Jason, my buddy Eric Lindley, who I run with, monthly, if not weekly sometimes. We had Darren Klotch. He's a part of the Ignite Trail series and the Dyno Racing guys. He said Midnight Rider, Gallows Pole by Led Zeppelin, Don't Fear the Reaper, Bleed It Out. And Eric Davis, who I can't remember his Instagram handle. It's like eggs over easy. Oh, dang it. Sorry, Eric. Forgive me for that. Eric Davis. Shout out to Eric Davis. I'll be running with him at the IT 100. He had Tom Petty, Zombie Zoo, The Waterboys, Hole of the Moon, and Warren Zevon, Werewolves of London. I love Warren Zevon, actually. And we had, that's it, actually, for this one. I forgot my other list. So that's the beginning of the list. And if I forgot your song, hit me up and I'll fix it. So yeah, we had some
Yeah,
good suggestions this week.
yeah, some great suggestions. Thank you for that, Joe. And yeah,
Oh,
oh, go
Jennifer
ahead.
said "Monster" by Lady Gaga. I forgot that last one. So yeah,
Oh,
sorry
Nice.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one actually.
that's a good one. Big shout out to all of our everyday athletes for your song submissions. We'd love to hear some more of your spooky songs. Definitely put those out this week as this podcast. This live show will be available right away. It'll be on YouTube in a couple days, and it'll be on podcast on Friday, October 4th, the same day that we have another article coming out from Elliot.
It's almost as if we planned that.
It's almost as if we planned that. So, Elliot, before we close this show out, and obviously we have so much to talk about that we have to have you on another show down the line.
I'd love to.
Uh, tell the people again about Monster Folk and the giveaway that you're running.
Sure, yeah. So if anyone doesn't know, my brand is Folklord. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I say that we make mythically stylish, high performance endurance apparel designed for legendary days. And all October long, I'm running this Monsters of Folk promo, extreme close up. And so every single purchase you make with Folklord, you'll get one of these trading cards. You can collect them all. They each have an individual discount code on them, and there's a golden ticket one that you can get a free hat. I'm going to be dropping a couple more hats imminently, very soon, so you can put your money towards that. I'm also dropping a couple other things that's later this month as well. So really excited about that. Appreciate the support. I appreciate the support from you guys for having me on the show, for letting me write articles for you, and just being awesome people to hang out and chat music with.
Yeah, thank
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, Elliot. And we're definitely going to have to do this again. There's maybe
Yes.
it is the Misfit Music episode, or maybe it is another fall special, but we're definitely going to have to align again on another episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of What's in Your Earbuds and our Everyday Athlete podcast network. So for those of you guys who don't know, we have another episode of Running Tales coming out tomorrow with Craig Lewis at 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's 6 p.m. British Standard Time. And in the same afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, we have a episode of the Fireside Chat coming out. I think we're on 129 right now, which is pretty crazy to think that we've been running that show for 2 years. And plenty of content every single week. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and you'll find this show immediately on Instagram Live as soon as we get off the air. So thank you so much, everybody. And thanks again for coming.